Hey guys, it's JJ, and before we get started with today's episode, I want to tell you guys about a credit card that Brad and I love, and that's the Jasper card. Jasper is a premium MasterCard issued by WebBank, member FDIC, that's designed for professionals who want to build great credit. This is a credit card that you can apply for with no credit history required, which is virtually impossible these days as long as you have proof of income. Here's the thing, you need a credit card to build credit efficiently, but most credit card companies won't approve you for a card unless you already have a credit history. Jasper is different because their unique underwriting is forward-looking. When you apply, they look at your potential instead of focusing just on your credit history. So maybe you just started a new job and you're heading in the right direction professionally, but you don't have much credit history built up yet. You can apply for the Jasper card, and if approved, have a real premium card now instead of starting out like many young people do with a debit card or a secured credit card. Plus, with the Jasper MasterCard, you can earn up to 6% cash back by referring friends. Of course, terms apply. Review them after you click. This card is perfect to help you start and continue to build your credit for you if you take the right steps. So if you are interested, click the link in the show notes to apply for your Jasper card today. Apply by May 31st, 2021 using promo code AMONEY to receive a $50 sign-up bonus. You'll receive your sign-up bonus as a $50 statement credit upon activation. If approved, terms apply.
What's up, guys? Welcome back. Another episode of the Average Money Podcast. Today we have a co-host in the building as well as JJ Buckner in from Missouri. We're going to be sitting down with my good buddy, my former business partner, Chris Candiano. You guys have heard JJ and I talk about DUBCO over and over again, and you guys have been watching me wear DUBCO shirts now for 3 years on YouTube. So somebody I've wanted to get on the podcast forever, but I knew that I wanted to get him in the house. We have literally a case of beer sitting in front of us. But I think the brewery aside, Chris has an amazing story to tell as far as entrepreneurship. I think if we look at the focus of the episode and what I really want the viewers and the listeners to get out of it is Chris kind of has found his own path through different careers and different jobs. So if you are new to this podcast, my name is Brad Finn. I am joined today with Chris Candiano, but every single day, JJ Buckner. How are we doing, bud?
I'm good, man. I'm excited for today's episode because I get to hear a little bit of the old pass from Brad, the previous business partner. It's going to be a good one. I'm also excited to hear Chris's story about just the typical. Chris, I've met you a couple times now, and that's the whole point of this podcast. Really, is to see how the average good old boy can just get up and do a little, grab the bootstraps, work hard, and a lot can happen in just a few short amount of years. So it's going to be a good one. I'm excited. And
Chris he's a podcast veteran as a big shot brewer. as a big shot brewer.
As I like to say, it's not my first time on the radio. And gentlemen, I appreciate you guys having me on today, and I'm looking forward to doing this and kind of talking this out with you guys. Also, talking about my pedigree, you guys are doing really good things out there for the average person. Kind of leading us into different ways to look at personal finance and stuff. So I really appreciate what you guys are doing. And looking forward to having a good conversation and some fun today.
Full disclosure, we've had a couple beers today.
Just a few.
It's called Friday.
We went to the brewery. We did a little taste testing. And
we're going to be opening some things. And actually, Chris was the level-headed one. We had all these fancy IPAs and big beers. And he goes, no. Let's just bring the light beer. Well, let's bring a case of them. Let's bring some beers we can have 10 of.
Yeah, that's what it's about. It's about hanging out and shooting the shit, and then not getting really turned up right now. Like we're talking business.
That's right.
So Chris and I, we went to school together, but we weren't necessarily like buddies. We were kind of like more of acquaintances.
Yeah. We've known each other since we were kids. Brad's father was like my t-ball coach back when we were 8 years old or whatever, and we kind of came up through school together, as acquaintances, and we had a nice like reconnection after college. We kind of ran into each other and started catching up, and we reconnected through our love of homebrewing. And that's kind of where this whole story and adventure starts.
Yeah, but it starts way before that, because even before the brewery and even before, like, I really want to get into the business thing. Like, because coming out of high school, you didn't go right into college, right?
No, coming out of high school, I went right into college. Graduated, with you in 2000. I did a semester home at CW Post, Long Island University. And, just staying at home, I thought I wanted to stay closer to my friends, my family, and that really wasn't the college experience for me. And honestly, going to college in general was not really like my my avenue of my career trajectory. You know, I wanted to go to college for the college experience. So, you know, that first semester I stayed home. It was like, whatever, this is not for me. Scholastically, I really didn't care. I was in a business program, and, you know, we'll get into that a little bit later. As somebody who kind of worked for themselves and worked in a family business for, you know, my entire childhood and somewhat young adult life, you know, business school at that time was kind of a joke. So, you know, that one semester home at Long Island University, I went up to Oswego State University, you know, up in upstate New York for another 2 years. Once again, more to enjoy the college life more so than to, you know, like,
Nothing wrong with that.
pursue a degree.
Did you do business there too?
I did, yeah. And, you know, there was some good takeaways and some bad takeaways. You know, my biggest thing from day one in college is they really don't prepare young adults for real life scenarios. You know, like you could study economic concepts and, you know, even general accounting was way too advanced for a 20-something-year-old kid to grasp, you know, without like, hey, how do I just balance a checkbook or have a credit card and not get into trouble? You know, that was like kind of the issues I would have with my teachers, and I became known to be that stickler in class. You know, when we're learning ridiculous advanced concepts of economics, and I'm like, hey, you know, how many people in here can balance a checkbook right now? Raise your hands, and it'd be like 2 kids, and the professor would be like, you know, this is, you know, like I appreciate your input, Chris, but you know, like this is what we're. I'm like, I'm just curious because
Basically, Chris,
I don't know how to balance a checkbook.
Yeah.
Like, is there a class for that? I'm a sophomore in college and I still can't do that. You know, like, you know, so that kind of led me into reevaluating, you know, where I wanted to go in life and what I wanted to do. As a kid, my parents were both self-employed entrepreneurs. They own their own businesses, real estate development and construction. You know, so I started sweeping floors when I was 10 to earn like a little bit of an allowance, and, you know, slowly learned from, you know, 10 to 15 or 16 the value of hard work and what a real job per se is, owning your own business, and, you know, the ins and outs of all the actual ins and outs of owning a small business. And that's from, you know, managing employees, subcontractors. Later in that, I got into expediting paperwork for plans and towns and stuff.
So I got a question for you real quick, because this is always something that very interests me is, do you think if your parents weren't entrepreneurs, would you be as focused or as in-depth and as excited about being an entrepreneur? Or do you think that's more of a, this is how I was brought up? Or do you think it's a more of a, this is who I am, and I'm an entrepreneur from...
That's tough to say. I mean, coming from that background where both my parents are entrepreneurs, I think that's part of your environment. You know, my dad never went to work and reported to a boss and had to come home and complain about his boss. If he had a bad day at work, it was his own fault. And you know, the same thing with my mother. And that's hard to answer. You know, and I've been on both sides of it. You know, I was brought up by 2 entrepreneurs who had, you know, successful and unsuccessful businesses at time. You know, that's the way entrepreneurship works. And there's been times in my professional life where I've done my own thing, worked for myself, and, you know, in the financial crisis of 2008, you know, as a self-employed, you know, contractor, had to take a hard look in the mirror when there's no work, the economy's in the shitter. And, you know, how to go work for somebody else. So I've been on both sides of the coin. Yeah. And it's kind of detrimental to start off as an entrepreneur, then have to go into a role where now you have to work for somebody else. You know, it's like a big reality check. You know, you're not your own boss. You have a boss now. And that's a great learning experience. So I don't know if it was better to start off as an entrepreneur or to kind of work into it, you know, after, you know, having either a college education and degree and going to work for a company or, you know, some other entity, and then exploring entrepreneurship from there. But going from that to being an employee for somebody for a number of years back to entrepreneurship, I think, you know, being humble and having to work for somebody else at any point in your life, you know, is a super important experience.
I agree.
I don't take anything back. Like I love the fact that I'm my own boss. It's hard, and it's harder than working for anybody else.
Did you see your parents as like living a rat race, living financially free? Did they have certain freedoms in life because they were their own boss? Other than you mentioned, like they didn't have to report to a boss. Did you see them living a more fulfilling life because they were an entrepreneur, or do you think they just worked like any of our friends' parents did?
I really think I don't think there was like a certain advantage. Like, oh yeah, you're your own boss. People always think like you're your own boss. You do what you want when you want it, when you want. And like I think it was more detrimental than the average Joe who has a 9-to-5 job, gets his 2 weeks vacation. Like there's whatever the situation is for the business you're in, there's deadlines, there's projects, and when you're the top dog and you're the boss, like that takes precedent over family vacations. That takes precedent over everything. Not that I'm saying like we didn't do those things, but business always came first, and then it was like playtime.
What was the first business that like when you were like, all right, I'm going to start going out and collecting money? Was it after Oswego, or did you have a business before you went to Oswego?
I mean, I always did. I'm from a construction background and real estate development, so I learned pretty much every trade fairly young in life. So I always did little side jobs, like I either worked for my family's company and, odd jobs in and out of summer. In the summers after college, I kind of wanted to change, that's your formative years of, young adulthood, right? You're exploring what you want to do, who you are. So I had done, from a kid, I did construction. After college, I got into, working in restaurants on Fire Island, New York. It's like a resort town. And in the summer, I lived there, and I started out as like a dishwasher. That's the one thing I really love about like the way my life kind of played out. Like I've done a lot of different things. Just like that's kind of what you want to do. You see where you fit, what you like. After college, one of my jobs, I was like the concessions manager at Bethpage State Park when they had the U.S. Open for, in 2002, I believe they had the U.S. Open at Bethpage State Park. So I got to like work, behind the scenes in concessions doing that, which was cool. I got to, do a lot of different tasks, meet a lot of pro golfers and stuff. And then from there, I was like, maybe I want to do something in the culinary field. So I started at the bottom. I would wash dishes in a hot kitchen in a beach town, and then slowly work up to like, all right, well, I kind of know what I'm doing. I kind of know how to cook. And then they would let me like cook some stuff. And I'm like, let me play around with this idea.
Was there an end goal, or was it like, what drove you? Was it the drive to make money? Like you've always been a hustler and you've been able to make money, but what was the motivation?
The money, yeah, the money is the money. Like I'm one of those guys. I'll work 60, 70, 80, 90 hours a week. I have no problem working. I love work. I love learning, and I love learning new things, So it's like that camaraderie when you're in the trenches with these people, people who work in kitchens, line cooks, dishwashers. Those are the people in the trenches, and everyone's like, it's a high stress, a high, work environment, and it's fun. Like I thrive on that hustle. It's like, it's like we're in the shit together. We're going to get through it. And at 2 a.m, we're all going to be exhausted, and we're going to have like high five and have a beer that we did this. Like we did it. We got through it. And it's just, I like the challenge. I like challenging myself.
So you didn't know what you wanted to be when you grew up?
No. I like to work, like I'm not one of those kids who ever just sat around, and freeloaded. I love to work, keeping.
I'll paint a good picture. Chris is that boss. If you've ever done any type of like manual labor, Chris is the guy about 20 minutes into lunch where you're like, man, I'm just loving this lunch break. And he's like, let's go back to work. And you're just like, and even when we were like opening up the brewery, which we'll get to, we'd be like fucking around, having some beers, and he'd be like, nope, back to work. He was always lunch was never an extended lunch. I could never talk him into like, hey, let's cut it early for the day and go to the bar. It was always, we have a task to complete. And like I said, I know you're not like messing around when you say you love the work, because the process of start to finish and that, like you said, the completion of stuff.
I do. And I guess that's my personality. You know, I guess that's that type A personality. I'm goal oriented. I have tasks, you know, I have a list of tasks for the day, for the month, the year. You know, I have my goals, and every day I wake up, it's very task oriented, and it's very, I don't know, that's like just a regiment that I have in my head. And I'm not from a military family or anything, but I feel like I was raised by like a military, you know, dad or something. Like I'm very regimented. I'm task oriented, and that like more than the money, like a completion of a goal or a task is more of a driver for me.
I think what JJ was trying to say, like, were you born with like what do you tell an 18-year-old that's like kind of like, because we have 18-year-olds that listen, we have young kids that listen, that are like, school's maybe not for me. I have that work ethic, and two, like, what do you tell them? Just try out a bunch of different like when you go to school undergrad. Yeah.
No, that right there, like I love that. Don't be afraid, because I was that kid. I thought I had to have everything in a row set up. I can't switch. I can't go off this path, because this path is going to get me to where my goal is, where I know the ending is. Well, I did that. I got to that ending point, and I'm like, all right, now what? So like, I'm glad to hear like, don't be afraid, because I wish I could have known that back then, saying I'm on this path. I can't get off it. I can't make the switch, even though I hated doing the process. Yeah. And I feel like enjoying the process is one of those biggest things.
And going back, I think a lot of people like saw the type of person like that Chris was as like a fuckboy, like what, like couldn't keep a job, didn't know what he was, bouncing all over the place. But you always had a nice truck that you paid for, that you worked for. You always had the nicest snowboard in town that you worked for and you paid
Listen,
for.
I worked hard and I made good money. And, you know, when you're younger, you don't look that far in the future in terms of financial. But, I like to enjoy the fruits of my labor. You know, it's like work hard, play hard. You know, that was my mentality. And, yeah, that's my biggest word of advice. You know, don't be afraid to go outside your comfort zone and work hard, improve yourself. You know, there are people out there in your life when you work hard that will lift you up and kind of shepherd you one way or another. Like, they see, you know, I've been fortunate enough to work with good people where they've not pushed me, but nudged me in a certain direction. You know, like, hey, maybe pursue this. You know, it comes down to hard work and figuring out who you are. And the only way to figure out who you are is to put yourself in the shit, you know, and
that's so true.
Was the first the first legit business that you had? I know, because I know about some of them just in passing, and I don't even know which ones were like yours or with partners. What was the first time you're like, all right, I'm going to start a business?
My first business was my own construction company, probably around like 2005. Like I said,
how old were you?
I guess 23,
25?
24, somewhere around there.
Yeah.
And like I said, I'd come up learning all the trades. I was lucky enough. My dad was a general contractor who, you know, being a general contractor, you don't physically do the work. You hire subcontractors. But I was lucky enough that I was on a job site, so I would hang out with the plumber for a day and learn some minor plumbing, hang out with the electrician, with the framer, with the tile guy, with a carpenter. You know, so I would just hang around these guys as a kid all summer, learning like little bits of the trade here and there. You know, so I was kind of a handy guy.
He's been handy. Like, whenever we need to build, how many times have I tried to build something and you're just like, so I'm like, Chris, because I would feel like when we were building the brewery, or just even he helped me build my last kitchen, and I'm like, dude, I got this. I can handle it. And he's like, don't even start. Just wait for me to get there. And I'd like try and like take the reins, and
I'm gonna show Chris what I got done already.
Yeah, and I'd get there and he'd be like, I think the fermentation chamber was like the first thing I tried to like build. And like, you knew that we were going to have to frame it in 4x8 sheets of OSB. And like, and you're like, did you account for this, that? And we ended up having to cut sheets and rip sheets down. And he's cleaned up a bunch of my messes before as far as building stuff.
Yeah. I mean, that just comes from me fucking up my own stuff over the years when I know, you know, like numbers in people's heads always add up, and they don't account for stupid little things here and there. But that's not from me being all knowing and all seeing. That's me learning from mistakes I've done plenty of times.
Because you were pretty much a one-man band with that. You had a couple guys that came on here and there, but you didn't have like a full team of guys. And you were in the Hamptons doing $1 million jobs.
Yeah, I mean that came a little later. In the beginning, it was just me, trying to figure out. All right, I have this skill set. I've done a couple things. I'm pretty good at this. I can make some decent money. Let me just put my hat in construction. It's one of those things where, especially today, it's when you can find someone that most construction jobs are not straightforward. It's like, yeah, I need a kitchen done, but the whole process involves a bunch of different skills and trade sets. So I kind of had a background in a little bit of everything. Anything major, I would always, major plumbing work, anything that would need to be done to code or a permit, I would get an electrician or a plumber in to do that. But all the minor stuff, people are always afraid to, turn the faucet off at the valve, like I don't know what to do. Just stupid stuff like that. So little jobs became bigger jobs became even bigger, and at a certain point we were building, new construction houses, and I would, buy flips and stuff. And
So this was pre 08 and 09.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah.
So back then, 05, 06, 07, were your plans kind of, I want to make this construction thing work. I want to see where it goes.
Yeah, I mean, that was like, kind of my background, and that's where I felt most comfortable, and that's where I did well, professionally and financially. I always hang my hat on the fact that, my quality was always top notch. That's what gets you work more than anything in that industry, like reliability and quality work.
Even when I walked in my kitchen, I was like, "You did this shit." And it was,
and that's just like I said.
Seen the
going
pictures,
back
my
to
kitchen was nice.
Going back to just that's just the person I am. I'm like type A personality. Like I like perfection. Which is unattainable, which is also another character flaw. Mm-hmm. But like I always try and put the best quality product out in anything I do, and people appreciate that. There's a lot of bad names out there, and people have 100 bad experiences with situations like this, and 99% of the work I got was because I would literally call people back, be courteous, and do a clean, neat job for a good price.
Which I think that's huge, especially nowadays, like needing to hire contractors to like work on a property or whatever, even if it's my own home. It's so hard to get just one guy to either text you, call you back, or whatever. I feel like if you're an 18-year-old kid,
I was just about to ask this because I know where you're going, because I was going to ask him, because I've talked to JJ about, what would your path have been if you didn't go? And you always said, I would have went to trade school, and then I would have learned a trade while getting paid, and I would have opened my own business. Like, we talked about this a lot, Chris. Like, what's your position on the current state of the trades?
There's nowhere near enough emphasis on it starting at a very early age. I mean, we're not dating ourselves that much. When we went to middle school, which is like the early 90s, which for some people...
Speak for yourselves, boys.
JJ was born in 91. JJ was born in 91.
But I remember, shop class and automotive class, where you would learn the basic skills, and then from there was no next stepping point. Like, you did it because it was part of the curriculum. You didn't have to do it. It was just part of the school curriculum. Even back then, I remember saying, like, I would love to, further this part of my education instead of the 100 other things I learned for the next 10 years of my education. And even truer to this day, there's probably 1,000 different majors you could go to fucking college for. Yeah. And 990 of them are not marketable skills in reality. And, like, I tell this to a lot of people, regardless of what you guys have been talking about. It's like that cliche. You're always going to need a garbage man. You're always going to need a plumber. You're always going to need an electrician. How many MBAs do we need in the world? Yeah. And it's...
that's exactly what we talk about.
Yeah.
We say it's especially as a high school teacher, we talk about what a shame it is that things like the trades, and then how many buddies do we have that have businesses that are like, I can't get a guy to come work for me anymore.
Yeah, you can't.
We talked to Ryan James, one of our the guy that did the plumbing at the brewery, and he's like, I would love to come help you at your house. He's like, I have limited manpower, and I literally cannot find work.
As the years go on, the trades are dying even more. We've been
which raises the price because supply and demand.
Yeah, and it's kind of one of those situations where we've been indoctrinated, like, you got to go to high school and do good in high school to get into a good college and go to a good college and get a degree. In what? To do what?
So
I don't
true,
know.
man.
You just got to get it. Why? Because that's what you're supposed to do. Well, I mean, we all know, we have friends and family, and everyone we know has gone to college, and there are people who have success in their field, and there are people who have a degree in women's studies and that have no bearing on their current life situation. And it's a lot of money and time to dedicate to something, to do it, and not necessarily translate into a marketable skill or trade for the rest of your life.
You're saying, like, people, if you're in college, you should be asking yourself, A, what are you doing there? And B, what the F are you going to do when you get out?
Yeah. I mean, the world isn't super, it's a super evolving, ever-changing place. And having a large skill set is going to set you up, for success no matter what you do. If you're that guy that studied Sanskrit in college and he had a master's, in the current climate, the way things are, I don't know how marketable your skills are. If you were that B or C student who chopped your way through high school and college and has done a ton of odd jobs here and there, I'm putting my money on that guy. It's the world we live in today. Technology is moving faster and faster. There are kids making $1 million doing fucking video game YouTube videos.
Whoa!
And that's cool. But for the rest of us, you need to prepare yourself for that smack in the face that's called real life. And that's kind of where I'm happy that I bounced around and did a lot of different things. It teaches you who you are, what you're capable of, and it kind of focuses your energy on who you want to be and what you want to do.
Yeah.
So 08 and 09 happens.
Yep.
The construction business kind of goes down a little bit. Work starts going out.
Yep.
What's next? Because you have this business you were looking forward to. I'm going to be in the construction industry. I'm going to move forward. Now there's no work. I mean, I can't imagine what that must feel like, being like, this is my goal. This is where I'm set up to do. This is what I'm going to grow.
It's tough. Yeah.
And now there's nothing. What's next?
That's like that look in the mirror reality check. Like, all right, what are your marketable skills? What can you do? What are we going to do? There's no work. No one has money. It's not just you. Everyone's lost their life savings. Their 401ks are gone. There are union, guys who worked in unions for 30 years and their entire life savings have been flushed down the toilet in the financial crisis. So, being younger has definitely helped that situation. Just a lot of plugging away and saying, look, I'm going to have to go work for somebody else. Here are my skills. Here's who I am. Here's what I've done.
And your biggest skill was work ethic. Chris could go to anybody and just be like, I'm going to work. Like, what work do you need done?
Yeah.
Yeah. And what it came down to was I wasn't the only person in the situation. There was a 1,000 other guys out there who were working construction that could do the same stuff, had the same skills as me. And it's selling yourself, your work, like Brad said, your work ethic. And I was lucky enough to jump on a commercial construction company, who had like a big contract with Starbucks.
Oh, I forgot you did the Starbucks thing.
Yeah. So for a couple years, I lived in, being from New York, I would drive to Virginia and work for like 3 weeks straight. And I would do nights, and we would do complete gut renovations in a existing Starbucks. So they have,
Forgot you did that. Oh.
They have, a 5, 10, and like 15-year plan on renovations. So a 5-year-old Starbucks still gets a facelift every 5 years to keep them current with the new stores they're building, and same thing for 10 and 15-year-old legacy stores like that. So I was a project manager. Me and my crew would go into a Starbucks in Washington, D.C., and they would close for the day around 2 or 3 o'clock. That's after the breakfast and lunch crowd comes in and they kind of slow down for the day. We'd shut a store down at like 3 or 4 o'clock, literally gut the store, and have it operational by 5 a.m. the next day.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, like a crew of guys come in, gangbusters, rip
Sounds like
it
a
out.
TV show. Like, yeah.
Jeez.
Yeah.
Materials ready. Everything's already go.
Yeah.
I mean, wow, that's insane.
Yeah. We would get to the store, literally, kick the staff out, pack up everything that was there, rip it out. We'd have a truck that, came from New York with all the new shelving, all the new cabinets, all the new countertops. I would drop my guys off. They'd start demoing. We'd have 2 box trucks. One would be for garbage. All the shit went into a truck. I would take another box truck and go to Home Depot and literally load like a 40-foot box truck with every possible thing we would need for that night before Home Depot closed at like 9 o'clock.
Just in case.
Wow.
Yeah.
Just in case.
Wow.
And yeah,
Did
these
you return
guys.
them afterwards if you didn't use it?
I mean, we did so many
Yeah,
jobs.
that's not ethical.
Yeah, we would do 3 or 4 stores a week.
I'm pretty sure both Chris and I are not allowed to return things to Home Depot anymore.
Yeah. But yeah, that was, it was crazy. And like this company got all these contracts because we were the only ones that would like have the balls to say like, we're going to come in, tell your staff to go home at 4 o'clock, and at 4 o'clock the next morning you're ready to open. It's not going to look pretty, but that store will open. And the corporate Starbucks was like, we don't see how this is possible.
So it wouldn't be done, but it'd be store ready.
It'd be done. It would be store ready, and then over the next like day or two, other finished carpenters would go in and clean it up and put the little finishing touches on.
What other weird? I know. Didn't you remove trees too? Didn't you do some landscaping as well?
I mean, so I did that for about 2 years, where I would work for a major commercial construction company, and all the work was down in the DC metro area. So I would drive down for 3 weeks straight, work 3 weeks straight, like 16 to 20 hours a day, and then have like a week off. So that got pretty old. And the money was good, but that's that work-life balance, and things were getting better economically for everything. So I kind of came back, and I was starting a family with my wife, and I decided to refocus back on my own construction company again. So I would work with acquaintances, and one of the acquaintances would do construction and landscaping on the side. That was just side money. Like we would do construction and do landscaping on the side. But like that was never really my passion, my focus. It could have been like another great business. I didn't know landscaping. The other guy I was working with knew it, and he was more into that. I was more into construction. Ultimately, he went one way, I went another.
But now, what everybody wants to know: how the hell do you open a brewery?
I think you read my like eye contact. I'm like, so you and Brad.
We let people listen for a half hour.
Right. So you and Brad, you guys went to the same high school. You said
Right.
Weren't necessarily like best friends or anything, right?
No, we were just friends,
Acquaintances.
So you guys linked up after high school?
After college.
Because I went to Arizona, and that was probably when you were doing
Way after college, yeah. Like you were in Arizona for a few years, right?
When did we started brewing in maybe 2009?
Well, hang on though. What you say you started brewing, but where did you two start? So were you guys brewing before this separately?
So I'll tell you, and we have mutual friends, and one of those mutual friends is my cousin Tom. And when I was getting into homebrew pretty heavy, and he was like, "Yo, Chris Candiano from high school?" I'm like, "Yeah." He goes, "He brews a lot of amazing beer. You should hook up with him and brew." And I'm like super anxious and introverted, and like I don't like reach out to people. And I'm like, yeah, no problem. And then I think Tom kind of knew that, and I don't remember how he got us together, but he was like, "You brew," and you were brewing like weird shit that I would never even think of brewing.
Yeah, I went all in.
You were dropping like oak spear. You were doing those like high end like stouts where I'm like doing like little beer kits, like trying to make a wheat ale. And Chris was always super. And I think that we'll get to this about even now, like the creativity that it takes to do what you do. But it was kind of cool because we were so different personality wise.
Yeah.
Chris is very meticulous. Like he said before, even with it, where I'd be like, yo, let's get blackout drunk and make some beer, and who cares what it tastes like. And Chris would be like sniffing things and like sanitizing one thing over and over again. And if you homebrew at home, you know like how much a homebrew kit will like enforce sanitation and like your beer will be terrible. And like I think I went to your house and you had like all these 1 gallon things, and you're like, I've had that in that 1 gallon jar for like a year, and this one's like 3 years old, and I was like, whoa, this is next level. This is next level.
That just goes back to me being insane in everything I do. You know, I take it to the next level.
If there's one thing that we had in common, though, not many people were homebrewing.
No. I mean,
we had an excuse to like get together.
I got into it on my own, going back to, you know, your cousin Tom, who I lived with at college, coincidentally, and our other buddy Tom. Back in those days, you know, like I said, I didn't go to college to learn. I went to college to have a good time. And then like we got into you're talking like 2001. We found, you know, there's typical college town, you know, 10-cent wings and dollar pitchers. And all my friends would be going to those. And me and my other buddy Tom, we found like the senior bar that had like real beer.
The Raven, right? Was it the Raven?
Yeah, the Raven in Oswego. Like in 2001, craft beer was anything imported from Germany or Britain,
or Sierra Nevada.
Yeah, like that was it. And maybe Magic Hat was around back then.
Oh, Magic Hat number 9 from Vermont.
Yeah. So I mean, like it was super limited, and we, you know, it was one of those bars back then that had 100 different beers, and we're like, we're gonna drink 100 different beers, you know, because we're gonna do it.
And in college too, this was when like you could go for 50-cent beers on tap, but we would come
pay
visit
$5 a beer.
Oh wow!
You know, 2001. It's
so
like,
this
you're
was pre.
an idiot.
This was pre like cool time to drink craft beer. This is like
you're an asshole because you're paying $5 a beer, and we could get a pitcher for 50 cents.
Yes.
What are you doing? And I don't know, like me and my one buddy were like, you know, like that's cool on a Monday night, but like, I don't know, this is way cooler and tastes better. And I don't know, like the vibe was different. And there were a couple people, you know, who ran the bar that were into it and kind of ushered us into what like craft beer and real beer was, you know? So that like sparked my flame on the whole craft beer thing. And I kind of had a big, big wave of me being into it and then getting busy with life, you know, after college and just drinking shitty beer again. And then, you know, I got reintroduced to the second resurgence of American craft beer in like the mid 2000s. And that's when I was like, this is awesome. And I can also make this for myself. I'm going to do this.
Because that's what it was for me. I was like, wait, you mean I could just make this at home?
Right. So you and Brad are meet up. You guys go to each other's houses, see what you got going on. Obviously, you're probably a little bit way more. Seems like crazier.
He was brewing different beer than me, and he was using advanced techniques that like I would hear about, and I'd be like, I'm not doing that. Like I was literally like hanging out on the stove and dumping it in a plastic bucket, where Chris was like flavor profiling.
I was kegging my beer, and Brad's like, "Wait, you can put this in a keg?"
he had a kegerator. You had like 5 or 6 beers on tap.
Wow.
And I'm like pouring my stuff in like old Corona bottles, and he's like, "No, dude, no." He's like,
"We're not doing this anymore."
He's like, "Come on."
I'm like, "You're not doing this anymore. Come to the promised land." I'm like, "Come on."
And then like kegging beer seemed like what do you mean? Like, how do you get it in there? That little, and if you've ever drank keg beer, you're like, how the hell did they get? How is this? What is this magic? Witchcraft. It's witchcraft.
Okay, well, you guys start meeting up with each other. So what happens next? Who kind of initiates the? Hey, let's start something.
Well,
here.
It started here, like in this house that we're in right now. You know, so Brad and his 2 brothers lived here. It was a bachelor pad, you know. So at the time, I was living about a half an hour away when we connected, and he would come brew some beer by me, and I'd come brew some beer here, and it kind of just like migrated here because it was the bachelor pad, you know? Like I was living with my wife, and she was annoyed by this, so I would escape to Brad's house to go brew, and
I was living with 2 guys, and we could just brew every night if we wanted to.
Yeah, we had a captive audience. You know, it was like Brad, his 2 younger brothers, and all their friends. It was a bachelor pad. There was always people here hanging out and drinking. And
Sounds like a good time.
Yeah, everything that we did, people, like the first couple times, everyone's like, "The fuck are you guys doing? You're making a mess in the garage." And then we'd had, like I said, we'd put it in a keg and put it in a kegerator. It'd be on tap, and these guys would come over and drink it. And like after a month or two, they'd be like, "Wow, this is
actually pretty good.
This is actually pretty good."
Yeah.
And so we had a boot, for tip money, and everybody would come and drink the beer and throw a couple bucks in, and that would pay for the next batch. And it kind of went out of control from there. We were brewing once a month, and then twice a month, and then once a week, and then a couple times a week. And we're like,
wow.
There was one point where I think I had 6 or 7 5-gallon buckets in the kitchen upstairs, and you don't know this, but when it ferments, you just smell the CO2.
Yeah.
You would walk in my kitchen and it would just, what CO2 smells like. You maybe don't, but if you smell it, you'd be like, oh, that was CO2. And my whole place.
yeah.
And he's like, bloop, 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 bloop. And everyone's like, what do you got going on? We're like, we got this over there and that over there.
Yeah, it was crazy.
Wow.
You'd walk in this house and it would look like Walter White lived here. It was like a fucking meth lab.
And as I said, he was with his wife, and I just started dating Tara, and people would say what are you going to do with all this? And at the time, it's funny because it was 25 gallons.
Yeah.
And 25 gallons of beer, and people couldn't wait. And then we'd have it on tap, and we would start telling people, hey, new beer on tap this Friday, and people would show up and drink it.
Wow.
Yeah.
And I think we were under the false pretense. Well, we kind of knew it was good, and you're always worried about, they're our friends and family. Of course.
It's free. Also, it's free.
Right,
it's free
right.
beer.
It'll get you drunk.
Yeah, it'll get you drunk. It's good. Whatever. Sure.
But I think the wives were really the ones that were like, all right, guys. Chris would have to take the train home, and Rockville Center was one of the last stops before the city. And Chris would get on the train after we brewed in the garage, and I'm like, yo, set 9 alarms on your phone. He would tell the conductor, make sure you wake me up.
I would pay the conductor $20 and be like, whatever you do when we get to Rockville Center in 20 minutes, just wake me up, make sure I get off the train. He's like, it's 20 minutes away. Just stay up. I'm like, I know. It's
not gonna happen.
That easy. It's not that easy.
And then he's in Jamaica.
Yeah, or I'd wake up in the middle of the night in Penn Station and have to wait until 4 or 5 in the morning to get back on a train to where I live.
And it's Tuesday.
Yeah.
But the wives were really like, you guys need to calm down and make this back into a hobby. You need to shut up about it. Kind of like what we dealt with our wives with YouTube. Either go all in or shut the hell up about it. And then we'd be like, oh, we'd be drinking. We'd be like, these wives. And then every once in a while, we'd look at each other like, do you think? And then we'd start looking into what would we need? What licenses would we need?
Originally we said, let's open up. At the time, the only place to buy beer was in one of these beer distributors, and they sold Coors, Miller, Bud Light, and you had to really we would drive hours to find interesting craft beer.
Yep.
Because we would
go up to Connecticut.
We would go find interesting craft beer and drink interesting craft beer while we were brewing. Let's get some ideas of what we can make, and we'd start making different stuff, and we would drink all these crazy craft beers while we were brewing.
And he's more risky. He'd be like, yo, they put fruit pebbles fruity pebbles in their beer. I'm like, whoa, fruity pebbles? And it was pretty good.
So yeah, our original idea was no one is selling this around here. Let's just open a beer distributor that sells only craft beer. No Bud, no Miller, no Coors. Let's just sell the cool shit. And that was kind of our focus. And we put a good amount of attention and time into finding a spot to do that.
Yeah, we looked at a couple of places, and just to keep people in touch. I was teaching and had the CrossFit at the time, and you were pretty all in with the construction. Things had picked back up, and you were doing well again.
Yeah.
So it was going to be a major sacrifice on both of our parts.
This is early 2010s, and I'm, full swing doing construction at that time. My business took off, and I was doing high end jobs in the Hamptons and in Manhattan, which is basically the same clientele. The people I was working for.
You had a budget for parking tickets, didn't you?
Oh yeah, I would put.
Listen to this.
So, in Manhattan, obviously parking is crazy expensive, and with commercial vehicles and stuff. you show up in the morning to work on a job. If there's no parking, you're not going to turn around and go home and not go to work that day. You double park, you get the ticket, and so
What's double parking mean?
Like cars are
if there's
parked
a
and
car,
you just stop in the
I would park in the middle of the street.
Yeah, you park. Yeah,
And
No way.
you know when like a FedEx truck will like but they're in and out. He would just
I would just leave it there for the day and get like 10 tickets.
but he factored into the price of the job.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
And the people that lived there expected that. They were like, "Oh yeah. Oh, this is the parking ticket part of the job."
Yeah, I mean, I
Wow.
would throw like $500 a day in parking tickets.
Oh.
And that's
everybody did it.
Yeah, that's the cost of doing business.
He would. You know in the movies when they open the glove box and like all the parking
Oh, yeah.
tickets fall out.
Yep.
I gotta say this. New York is a different world up here,
You
man.
have no idea.
I got off the plane, and was I not, Brett? I was like, oh, whoa, what's going on here? Oh, there's a wreck right in the middle of the road. Brett's like, oh, dude, this is normal. We're gonna...
We were on the Grand Central Parkway and like he was like holding on to the holy shit bar. Like, whoa,
like-
whoa.
Then we almost saw another wreck because of the wreck. I'm like, Jesus, oh my gosh.
Welcome to New York.
Yeah.
So we digress. So
Yeah, but
so we were doing good, and then what happened? What happened with the bottle shop? Didn't we find out like you couldn't just get a license
Yeah,
for it? You had to
like-
be a grocery store. Or some
yeah,
shit
so
like
I mean,
that?
there's crazy liquor laws in New York State. Every other state has different. There are certain states where there's a store just for beer, which is like New York. You can only go to a store to buy beer, and if you want liquor or wine, they're in a different store. And that probably sounds crazy to a lot of other people.
does.
It sure
in
does.
Virginia, it's a ABC store where they sell beer, wine, and liquor in the same place.
Missouri, yeah.
Yeah.
At the gas station, you get a bottle of
Yeah.
fucking Jack.
So
whatever you want.
in New York State, you can only buy beer in a beer store and liquor and wine in a liquor store.
Wow.
So I mean, as crazy as that is, we wanted to open a beer store, and like the law states,
We'd have toilet paper.
in New York, if you go into a beer store, beer distributor, they sell water, they sell soda, they sell iced tea, they sell non-alcoholic products along with beer. So we would have to sell non-alcoholic products or basically become a grocery store, get a grocery license and sell food, which, we went down that rabbit hole for like a minute. We're like, we're not going to fucking open a grocery store. This is crazy. So
And our wives wouldn't let us open a grocery store.
yeah, so then we kind of were dejected and we're like, I don't
Hold
know,
on.
man.
Did you guys like actually think about like open?
Yeah.
We're
Yeah.
gonna open
We're
a
like-
grocery
we're
store
like,
to
all right,
sell
well-
beer.
Oh, dude.
Oh yeah, we're gonna sell
sit-
beer and we're gonna do like high-end snacks.
I love it.
We
I
were
love
like,
it.
we're like, okay, we'll go out to the Hamptons and we'll find somebody that's roasting their own nuts or making their own potato
Yeah.
chips, and we'll have or making their own cheese plates, and we'll have charcuterie boards. And
Right.
We'll have one or two. We'll have a Long Island section of craft beer. We'll have all. Yeah, dude, we planned it out. We drew.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah, and then like the logistics of that,
And then you go in and try, and when we were looking at buildings, we're trying to tell landlords like what we want to do, and they're like,
they thought we were nuts. So you're gonna sell nuts and you're gonna sell beer. Okay, you realize this is like $2,000 a month.
and we were good with numbers. We'd be like, all right,
we knew the numbers.
we can get the beer for this, we could sell it for that, and everyone was on board, and it just didn't happen. So we're like, do we just
Yeah,
make
and
the
that
beer?
whole time we just kept brewing and brewing and brewing more beer. And then I don't know, we had this like epiphany one day, like why are we gonna open a store to sell other people's beer?
Yeah. When
Like-
you're making your own.
And if you make your own and have a brewery, you can sell other people's beer at your brewery if you wanted to. There was that license.
Yeah. Yeah, so one day we're just like, why are we trying to sell other people's beer when we can make our own beer and
Wow.
sell that too?
And the restaurant doesn't exist anymore, so we can say we had a buddy that owned a restaurant, and he was selling our beer.
Like our homebrew, yeah.
Yeah, he was selling our homebrew in his restaurant.
Oh, and this.
And he was called like it would be like you remember when we went to Farrell's saying it was like Farrell's Pale Ale or whatever? This place was like Roots Pale Ale. And nobody knew who made it. It was a house beer.
Yeah, house beer.
And we were making
Everyone
it.
was like, man, this is amazing. He's
And
like,
we
yeah, it's
were-
our house beer.
We would go in
Wow.
and sit at the bar. That's how we, because back to like our friends and family saying it was good. That's how we kind of knew that we'd be okay commercially, because we would go sit at the bar
And listen.
and listen.
Yeah.
Or we'd buy one for somebody, or we'd start conversation like, oh, I'm thinking about getting this one. Have you had it? Or somebody would order it, and I'd be like, oh, you got the house beer? How is it? Is it good? And they'd be like, yo, dope, get it, get it.
Wow.
Yeah.
And then we're sitting there like,
Told you.
Yeah.
so now we're like, we gotta get more restaurants, but then we realized that opening, essentially, alcohol's a drug, right? So it's not like any other business. You're essentially trying to tell the state that you want to be a legal drug dealer, and they got to be okay with that.
Yeah, I mean,
Chris took the bull by the horns as far as like you found. How many buildings did we look at? We walked in that first building and
50 buildings.
You walked into the place that DUBCO is now, and dude, it was disgusting. There was like a former bakery in there. They hadn't been in there in 2 years.
Oh, wow.
Couldn't even see the tile floors, just like terracotta floors.
They're black.
And it was black from like the flour that had dropped and molded. And he walked in, he's like, "There's our spot." And I'm like, "What the?" But with his construction background, he was able to see a vision.
Visualize it, yeah.
Yeah. And he's like, "Dude, we're opening a brewery." And not to mention, so I had just left the CrossFit. So I was like, we can do this. I have time. But you had a daughter on the way. There's so many like.
Well, I'm shocked. So DUBCO, where we went today, is where you guys started.
That's where we started. Yeah.
I didn't know that.
So where the tasting room is,
Yeah.
that was it. That was the whole.
It was one unit out of a bigger building.
Well, yeah, because I'm picturing what you all have going on right now. I mean, it's literally, it's a huge building, but it's kind of separated.
Yeah.
You
Right.
have the
It's a
tasting
big
area.
building with separate units.
Right.
So we got one unit back then. And then obviously over time, we've expanded for pretty much the whole building.
Got it.
You know, so we were lucky enough that our neighbor on one side of us was a CrossFit gym, which at the time Brad's biggest competitor when he owned a CrossFit gym was our neighbor. And
When we pulled up, I'm like, you just brought me
Oh,
here?
Yeah.
to CrossFit Islip? You just brought me. He's like, hold on. He's like, one day we're gonna kick those mother effers out of here.
Yeah.
And then 6 years later, peace. But
Wow.
how long did we got the lease? And this was another thing. So telling a landlord that you're gonna open a bottle shop is one thing. We had our landlord. We're trying to tell him what we're trying to do. He was not on board. So we kind of fibbed. We didn't tell him exactly what we're gonna do. We didn't tell him there's gonna be people there drinking.
Right.
Because
Yeah.
he didn't want a bar.
He didn't want a bar. And we're like, we're not opening a bar. We're opening a brewery where people can buy beer.
A food manufacturing facility.
You know, we're going to
That's a good way to put it.
I know that's what our license says. We were a food manufacturer.
Yeah, we're going to brew beer here and we're going to sell it to the public. They can come here and buy it. They can come here and maybe taste it, but they're not going to sit here and drink it.
Maybe taste. Yeah.
You know, if they want to taste before they buy it, you know, whatever, we'll give them a taste.
We'll give them free samples if they want to give us $5 for that sample. Maybe.
Yeah, exactly. They're discounted free samples.
We got the building. November 1st, I think.
Yeah, November 1st, 2014.
And we didn't really have any money.
No, and that's the biggest thing about this whole saga and story.
Which is funny. This is a financial podcast. So I definitely wanted to we didn't have any money.
Yeah.
But we both were guys that were like, we'll find the money. We'll find the money. We'll find the money. But then the money, it was a lot of money.
Yeah, I mean, being underfunded starting any business is the biggest no-no. You know, like you can have business plans, you can have goals, you can have dreams. If you don't have the money, it's never going to happen. And we didn't have the money. We scraped together every last penny to start the corporation, to pay the first month or two of rent and the security deposit. And then luckily, you know, that the fact that we could do most of the work ourselves.
Yes. So we were doing our day jobs. He was out in the Hamptons, an hour away, coming back at night to try and scrape the floors and things like that. And we didn't get licensed until April.
Right.
So we had to pay commercial rent on this building. We had to pay rent
6 months.
6 months.
Wow.
While trying to get licensed. And we're also still brewing during this time. So like it got to the point where we're trying to come up with money to just brew and continue our hobby. But then he would be like, "Yo, how is it the first of the month already?
Yeah.
How are we another month?" You know, and then it was right into Christmas too. Your daughter was born pretty much the day we signed the lease. When's Maddie's birthday?
October 17th, and we signed the lease on November 1st. My firstborn child was born on October 17th, and we, you know, crazily signed the lease on a building for $2,100 a month.
And we didn't know if we'd actually get licensed because we had to go through the federal government For the New York State wouldn't even
Sign the lease before the.
Yeah, you need a
because
lease.
they
You
don't
need a building.
They don't license people. They license buildings.
Wow.
And New York State wouldn't talk to us until
We had our federal license.
we had our federal license first. So we had to go through the federal process first and hopefully get that. During that time, we're paying rent. So luckily we put in our lease. Like if we don't get licensed, that was a clause that we had to get out of our lease. But yeah, we didn't.
Wow.
And everybody that we were talking to was like, dude, they don't just give these licenses away.
Yeah, and I mean, I was lucky enough that, you know, I was doing well enough in my construction job that I was funneling some money to help out. You know, Brad was teaching and doing side jobs and stuff, and he would throw in as much as he could throw in to just keep the kitty full, you know, to just like get to the next month and get to the next month and get to the next month. And like that entire building was built on reused construction materials. Like that bar that we sat at today was, you know, wood flooring that I ripped out of a house in East Hampton. You know, it was like reclaimed, you know, hardwood floors. Just everything was. I would throw an extra 2x4 or two on each job, and that was the framing for the place. You know,
No way.
He would just come home like, all right, I got this bench. I don't know where we're gonna put it, but we'll find a room for this
I just
bench.
ripped a bench out of a house. You know what? People need to sit at the brewery, and now we get a bench. You know,
And then we're like, oh, we'll get some bar stools. And they were like, they're like $300 a chair. And then a bar went out of business. And I was like, yo, can we get those? And they sold us all those. I think those bars, where are those? Do they still exist, those bar stools?
no, we got rid of them like a year or so ago.
They had a good run.
There were dates on them, like on the bottom. It was like, this chair was fixed, you know, 2012. You know?
Oh my gosh.
And, you
Fixed in
know, a
2000.
leg would fall off, and I'm like, oh, you know, right on to fix the 2016, you know? And, you know, and then, you know, eventually when we're making money, we can afford newer bar stools. But yeah, everything in that place was used, reused again. You know, we made it happen.
And then we found out, like I was in Colorado. I think it was like April 14th. It was like one of my spring breaks. And you called me, and it was one of those things where we're checking our email every morning. And I was an hour or two back. So I wasn't awake yet. And Chris called me. He's like, yo, did you see the letter? And I was like, what's up? He's like, we're in. And then we were like, sweet. Well, yeah. But then I was like, wait, now what do we do now?
Yeah,
And
what
Chris
do we do?
Oh wow.
Chris is like, I guess we just like make beer. And so you're better at this. And I'm actually curious too, because I really don't know now, but like we started with one barrel, which is 30 gallons or 2 kegs.
Right. Yeah. We started with that one barrel.
And what did we have? We had 2 or 3 1 barrel fermenters and then like 2 2s.
Yeah. Yep.
And
we had your buddy like weld us a custom little, like, you know, it was a giant stove essentially with giant pots on it. It was nothing extravagant.
30 gallons. That's
It's
it.
so crazy.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's so crazy though, because I'm thinking like what you guys are saying versus what I've seen today, like what's there. It's unreal to think about.
We started like me and Brad probably together, you know, we put probably about 10 grand in to start that business. And you know, in 5 years later, it's a 7-figure business. You know, it's crazy.
Jeez.
It's crazy. You know, like and that's touching back to, you know, this is one of those instances where we really got lucky that we could start something like this with literally no money and just sheer will and get it off the ground and make it successful. And if I had to do it again, I would not do it again that way.
If somebody asks, do people ask you, because people come in like
100%.
Especially when we were smaller, people would come in all the time like, I'm a home brewer. I want to do this. And we would look at each other like don't.
Do not do this.
Like people
and not for
it's
any
the only
selfish
business
reason.
I've ever been in. Like don't, it's
Not for a selfish reason. Like, I don't want you to do this because now you're another brewery or my competition. Do not do this because you have to be insane.
And the funny thing
do
is,
what we
we
did.
would read blogs and they'd be like, do not open a brewery unless you have 10 barrels or less, or 10 barrels or more.
I don't understand why though. Because of the time, because of the amount you have.
I'll tell you that. Okay, so one of the first problems we had was, so we were making 2 kegs at a time, and we were brewing every single day to fill fermenters that would take 3 to 4 weeks to make. And then we would open, and everyone would be stoked on it, and we'd sell out in 2 hours.
Oh man.
And we grew out. We were brewing in my house 10 gallons at a time. And we thought that was like when we got the 1 barrel system and we're looking at 60 gallons. Like the first time we filled a pot with 100 gallons of water and we saw 100 gallons of boiling water, we thought we had the most beer that you could ever imagine. And
who's going to buy all this? It's 100 gallons.
And then 50 people show up and it was gone in an hour. So we grew out of that 1 barrel system.
Day one.
Immediately.
Day one.
So were you guys okay? This is the money nerd coming out in me right now. All this is going on. You got the 100 gallons you're brewing. Where was like your guys' heads at money wise? Because I know like you and I now being in the money space, we kind of talk about goals and aspirations and what we want to do. But were you two kind of having those conversations, or was it just like we're living by the seat of our pants? We need to keep brewing as much as we can. Like where was the money aspect going on in the business?
So from like my standpoint was like, hey, listen. I'm doing pretty good what I'm doing. Brad's doing pretty good what he's doing. This hobby has taken a life of his own, and now this is a cool little side hustle. Like now we have a brewery, and we always said at the end of the day, no matter what happens, this will at least be our place to hang out with our friends. Like if no one shows up and doesn't drink any of this, like we have a bar, we have a brewery where we make our beer.
It really was supposed to be like a break-even business. We never saw it being what it is today.
Wow.
It was like, hey, how can we monetize this cool hobby we have? And we ran the numbers, and we knew we could at least break even. Like the rent was like $2,000 a month or something. So the overhead with all the other bullshit, like we knew we could sell a few $1,000s worth of beer in a month to say, hey, we own a brewery. Come and hang out.
Yeah.
But we thought we were going to be open every day. We'll see you Friday, Saturday, Sunday. And then we'd be like Friday at 8 p.m. We'd be like,
sold out of our beer.
we'd like ring the bell like, you guys got to go.
Yeah. Can you come back in like 2 weeks when the new beer is ready?
So were these just random people just coming? I mean,
Yeah.
For the most part, it really was.
how'd they hear about you guys?
Word of mouth.
Yeah.
Word of mouth.
Which is the most insane thing. This is before social media, really.
Really took over. Like when we were open for months before we started Instagram. We were open for months.
Yeah.
Like what does Instagram? What does that have? 15,000 followers maybe on DUBCO right now?
Yeah, 15 to 16,000, which is still nothing crazy. Like
we did a Kickstarter
we fly under the radar, like
we did a Kickstarter, which helped. And that's the other thing too. We didn't really want to tell people because we didn't know what we were getting ourselves into. We didn't know, because we were kind of lying to our landlord. We didn't want people lining up around the block. But I have a funny story though that I wanted to hear from your perspective because I've heard it from your perspective. I just want to hear it again. Tell JJ about the night that I dumped the 2-barrel fermenter.
Oh God, yeah. So I mean, in the beginning, like I said, I was working 12 hours a day construction. Brad was working, teaching and coaching and stuff after that. So we'd work our day, and then meet up at the brewery, say 5, 6, 7 o'clock at night, to then start brewing. A full batch of beer takes about 8 hours to brew. So at 6 o'clock at night, you got another 8-hour shift.
Wow.
And he has a newborn. And he has a newborn at home.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. So I mean, like this is what we love, right? So this is what we're gonna do. And it was a long day for me. It was a long day for Brad.
Brad was drinking.
We were drinking because that's what you got to do to get by after the trials and tribulations of life. And so the end of the brew, everything's done. And at the time, we had a very rudimentary system where, if you know anything about brewing, temperature control is the number one thing you have to do for fermentation. So we didn't have temperature controlled tanks. So what we did, we like Brad mentioned earlier, we built a temperature controlled room. So ambient temperature, whether it's 20 degrees or 100 degrees out, we need this room at 68 degrees exactly. So we built a room with a temperature controller. And we'd fill up this big tank of, at that time, roughly 70 gallons of beer, and you'd have to wheel it into this room.
We had it on casters.
We had it on giant casters.
Sketchy casters.
So, I mean...
That I welded on.
Yeah, so...
I know how to weld.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, we learned
I
how
watched
to...
a YouTube video.
We learned how to do everything. So now it's like 3 o'clock in the morning, we're done. And, I'm starting to clean up, and Brad's going to wheel this, I'd say, 6 foot tall,
On the casters, yeah.
2 foot round, almost 100-gallon tank of liquid that we just spent 8 hours making into this room. and we have a tile floor.
Terracotta tile floor. You saw it.
Yeah, and the wheel catches, and
Rule
it
number
starts-
1: never push the fermenter.
never push. You always pull.
Oh my gosh.
So yeah, it catches a tile. It starts going over, and Brad just jumped and bear hugged the thing, not even knowing he could save it. Just
Instinctive. It was instinctive.
instinctively, and I think out of solidarity that he knew we're all fucked, and he rode that thing down, and that 8 hours and that 100 gallons of beer
Gone.
ended up in an 8x8 room.
But losing the beer is one thing. Having 100 gallons of sugar water.
Oh
Yeah.
my
'Cause that's what
gosh.
beer is before you ferment it.
Yeah, it's sugary water in an 8x8 room at 3 o'clock in the morning. That was not a good day.
And I broke the tank because it was like aluminum.
Yeah.
No, it wasn't aluminum. It was
Yeah,
stainless steel.
We got that.
You got a hammer out, but
we got the hammer
it
out,
hit,
fixed it.
and then like the top exploded off
Oh my.
because it was like top
gosh.
fill. Top exploded off, and
And-
like, I must have yelled, and I wish we had cameras then. So I could see the look on your face when you heard me yell, because I can only imagine now, especially years later, and we've both seen a bunch of looks on each other's faces.
Yeah.
I can't even imagine. And I think it was one of those things where I was like, Chris, go home. I get it. I'll clean. He's like, don't talk to me.
Yeah.
Don't make any jokes about it, because I like to make jokes when
Yeah.
when I'm flustered.
When he's uncomfortable, he makes a lot of jokes.
He's like, don't talk. He's like, when we're done, we're not even saying goodbye. We're going to squeegee this place. We're going to mop this place. It's going to be 5 a.m. I got to go out to the Hamptons in 2 hours and maybe go see my wife with my 3-month-old daughter. And you're not going to say a word.
And we're never going to talk about this again.
So the moral of the story is
Always pull
What-
the fermenter.
always pull up a mental. But what I mean, really though, is what you got now is so many people don't realize what goes in to building something like that.
Nobody. Like, literally, there's that cliche of, like, to be a professional musician or to be a professional anything, you got to put the 10,000 hours in. We put the 10,000 hours in. We've fucked up more than most people will get right. We've had incidences like that where at 3 o'clock in the morning, we ruined an entire batch and
Cannot imagine.
destroyed the place.
We've had to dump beer too because it didn't turn out right.
Yeah, I mean, like those things behind the scenes that people never know, will never know, don't give a shit about. Like that's what keeps me going. It's like, you know what the fuck I've been through? Like, you don't. And I don't care, and I'm still going. Like,
Now they see you. So that first unit that we got was what, 1,500 square feet?
roughly, yeah.
So, I mean, because we can, and we probably will talk about this after the podcast, but talk about the brewery. There's 2 things I want you to talk about. Actually, first, let's talk about this. Tell JJ what I'd be like when you wanted to buy something.
I mean, the one thing that I do appreciate the most about us starting DUBCO together is that yin and yang. Like, you can't have 2 guys that are just gung ho and let's do it, and let's do everything, and you can't have 2 people who are timid and never want to take a chance. And that was the best thing about me and Brad. We always played off each other. In certain instances when he would be like, let's go, and I'd be like, maybe not. Or, like, I'd be in the exact opposite position, and he would be the one to have, like, a moment of clarity, So that's the one thing that I really believe is one of the most, the foundation of starting DUBCO is, like, having somebody, at the time, we were both scared, and he would assuage some of my fears and vice versa. So, I mean, that was super important to the business. And, Brad's always been financially minded.
I'm a cheap fuck.
Yeah.
Yes.
And
And I didn't know how much stuff costs. He was in the construction industry. He's like, dude, that's what stuff costs. I'm like,
Yeah.
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 yeah, I mean, normally when I would talk numbers on anything, there's at least 3 to 5 zeros in it, and Brad's like, well, is this more than like $300, huh?
how much was the floor, the epoxy floor? Or the 2 things I couldn't believe the cost. I couldn't believe the cost of the floor,
Yeah.
and I couldn't believe the cost of the walk-in box.
See, the walk-in box, I fully expected more.
So the walk-in box is like the big cooler that.
Yeah, we had it's a giant refrigerator, and in the grand scheme of things for this industry,
very necessary.
It's the most important thing, but ours is not that big. It's 24 feet by 12 feet. So that's a big refrigerator, and that was $37,000. To me, that doesn't sound that expensive. I
would have thought that refrigerator would have been more than that.
I'm saying, you could buy a Viking refrigerator for $5,000 that has meat and cheese and soda in it. We have,
that's a big refrigerator.
We have a refrigerator that's the size of small apartments, and it was $37,000. To me, that wasn't that expensive. But
what was the floor?
The floors are about $40,000. To coat the floors. We have.
But that was the thing too. It was a refrigerator and a floor at the same time.
Okay.
Yeah. So there's $80,000.
So the reno so we went from 1 barrel to 3 barrels, and then there was a big move for us. It was, and this was right before I stepped away from the business, and I pretty much went with Chris for the journey through, expanding to where DUBCO is now, as far as well, actually no, because it's expanded even further, but as far as the brew house and the expansion into the next unit. So we had that 1 unit, and now you have 3. So you essentially have about 7,500 square feet. No, you have 4,500, 5,000 square feet.
It's the whole building 7,000, and I have what's 3/4 of 7,000.
Yeah,
You're the math teacher.
About 5.
Yeah,
but so it was a big deal when we went up to 10 barrels, which is what you brew on now. How many gallons is that? What's your gallons per week right now? Just because people understand gallons.
So barrels. We talk beer is barrels. A barrel of beer is 31 gallons. So we started when we opened up in 2014, brewing 31 gallons of beer, and now our smallest batch is 366 gallons.
And how much?
More than 10 times from when we opened up.
And you have 420s.
We have 420 barrel fermenters, which means we have to brew twice in the same day to fill them. So those are 660 to 700 gallons. So think about that. The first fermenter we filled when we opened the business 6 years ago was 31 gallons. Now, average batch is 700 gallons.
I think we figured out the first year that we were open, we made 50 gallons. 50 barrels.
50 barrels.
And now you make 50 barrels in a week.
We make 50 barrels every other day.
Every other day.
Jeez.
Yeah.
Which is 100 kegs. You're making 100 kegs every other day.
Yeah.
That's insane.
Yeah.
Dude, it's nuts.
Yeah, I mean, that's
But it never would have started if you two wouldn't have really figured out, hey, let's try this thing out and see what happens.
It was stupid.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing.
But then again, he was willing, because Chris had
But you guys took the chance.
So going back to circling back, when he said I wanted a finished product, he was good at seeing, if you spend money and you do quality things, he saw the return on investment. He said, hey, we can do a crappy floor, but if we do a $20,000 floor, we're going to be redoing it every 3 years. So let's do it right the first time. We have the building empty. There's no fermenters on it. But I know, I got to drive a fork truck because of this guy.
I'm definitely big in, if you're going to do something right, do it right the first time. And we didn't do it right the first time, because we couldn't. And that's touching back to undercapitalization, and underfunding a business. And I'll say it again. I'll say it till the day I die. We are very lucky in the fact that this thing,
it shouldn't have worked,
is where it is today, and it's out of just sheer will and perseverance. Nothing other than that. We had to beg, borrow, and steal, to get to opening this place, and for some reason people came. And it's just us being who we are, and standing behind our dream and our beliefs, and just kind of willing. I really believe I willed this into existence. I believed I could do this.
Yes. He always would tell me, you walked me off the ledge more times than I've ever walked you off the ledge. I want to wrap it up. I want to say one thing too, because I think there might be a little bit of misconception out there too right now in hearing all this. Chris has a multi-million-dollar business right now, and it is currently
8:28 Eastern Standard Time.
8:28. Chris has not been home from work. So how many hours are you? So we're about to have 7-year anniversary or 6? 6-year anniversary. You still work 100-hour fucking work weeks.
I mean, owning your own business, you're never not working, but physically I'm at work still 6-7 years later, minimum 60 to 70 hours a week. Like you're not gonna hit the lottery. You're not gonna get lucky. You're not gonna, make money in your sleep unless you put the hours and the dedication and the time in, and I have no problem doing that. I thrive. Like I said, I thrive on that. My entire life, I thrive on working hard and, seeing a goal and getting it done.
So I got one last question before we wrap this up, Brad.
We can keep going. If people don't want to listen, they can turn it off.
I'm down. Where after all the success you've had, DUBCO is where it's at. It's a successful brewery. Where do you see, not necessarily like DUBCO, but where do you see like Chris in like 5 years?
When do you not work 80 hours a week anymore?
I don't see that person.
He's gonna be an old
I don't know. I'm an old school Italian guy. Like I really feel
you're gonna be the guy. He drinks black coffee. He's gonna be drinking black coffee in his 70s, like sitting there drinking his coffee.
Yeah, I don't know, man. I enjoy what I do, and the day I stop enjoying what I do is in the day I'll move on. I enjoy working, in one aspect or another. We have a trajectory on where we want to be, what we're doing. We have plans for the future, for expansion and, multiple locations. And, the next 5 to 10 years is seeing phase 2 and 3 of DUBCO coming to fruition. Right now we're distributed nationally and internationally. You can get our beer.
Yeah, people are going to ask, how can they get DUBCO beer?
You get our beer through the Tavour app. It's an app on your phone where you can buy beer from all around the country. International listeners can get our beer through Beer Bruvs in the UK. We have distribution deals in the works in Japan. Like there's been this guy in Japan, breathing down my neck for a few years right now. Craft beer is huge in Japan,
Wow.
So, I mean, the sky's the limit, and I just want to, from growing a little bit too small and too fast, I feel like we're in the zone right now where it's manageable. We have a clear focus. We're capitalized in the right way. This is an industry where everything is astronomically expensive, and
what the canning line cost roughly
$120,000.
Wow.
we have a canning line that came.
These are all things I missed. That's why I asked, because I'm not asking so you say it. This is after I've left the business where he got it.
So I mean, in the craft beer industry, canned beer is super huge. Draft accounts have no pun intended, dried up. Especially with the pandemic, with bars and restaurants being closed, we got, once again, there's a lot of luck involved in success.
See, we can go down this,
because
people will probably want to know, how did COVID?
Yeah.
Well, real quick, how did COVID affect you?
I mean, we couldn't have been luckier. We bought a canning line in 2019 that got delivered April 1st, 2020. So when literally the world shut down. We would use what's called a mobile canner, which is an outside company with their own equipment that would come in and package our beer, which, with every other subcontractor is expensive. They have their own equipment. We pay for their equipment and their time and their labor and their materials. So spending $120,000 was a big investment, but the math doesn't lie. The numbers don't lie. We've pretty much paid that off in. It's going to be, it's just about a year today that we got that canning line.
It counts. How many cans have you done? Do you know?
275,000 roughly in a year, so that's a lot, so we were able to shift from packaged beer in kegs to packaged beer in cans literally overnight when COVID happened. And I guess, that's another story for another podcast, but we got super lucky with the timing. We were paying our mobile canner $58,000 to $60,000 a year to package our product. Just sheer extra costs added to each, to our products every year. So spending $120,000 and then doubling production, we paid that $60,000 off in a year. by not using an outside contractor, buying that equipment at the right time, doubling production, that $60,000 we would have paid to somebody else.
And it became a real business. And that's kind of, people ask me all the time, like, why would you leave something like that? I wasn't cut out for what's going on there. And I've said before, like, I was essentially with my teaching, I wasn't going to leave my teaching job. So when the business became a business and there was steps that needed to be taken, I didn't fit a role. Like, it was costing the business money we were going to have to hire somebody to do the extra work that I needed to do, and it just wasn't worth it. And then too, like, and that was causing tension too, because Chris kept seeing this vision, and Chris wanted it to go, and it needed to go, and I had my hands tied too. So we started to butt heads a little bit, and it was like, dude, like, I'm not gonna ruin our friendship because now over 5 years time, at that time, we're really good friends, and I'm like, you need to go. And like, we need to separate ourselves from this brewery situation to restore.
That's super healthy. And that's something that, like, I wish other people understood. And if they have the opportunity and the situation, like, that's the thing. I said before, I'll say it again. We couldn't have started this business without each other.
Right.
The fact that it grew bigger than both of us, and Brad was humble enough to say, like, listen, this is your vision, this is your thing. I have my own career that he's dedicated to his teaching job, and he can't leave, and and just to the fact that this little side hustle we had grew into this monster, and he was like I said, humble.
I was
enough.
able to step away and still be proud of it.
Yeah, and that's something that to the day I die, like, I'm going to be proud that I got to start this with, my good friend, and
that's cool.
And, we could both see it grow and both be happy about it. That's the thing with businesses and startups and stuff. Like, it always morphs and transforms into something that was totally not the original plan. Like we were talking about, like, did you foresee this? We didn't foresee this.
Yeah.
So the vision changes and people change, and, we're lucky enough to still be here talking about it and be friends and be happy and have a positive feeling about it going forward. Like, once again, we're super lucky, super humble and blessed to be even in this position, and that's the one thing that keeps me going every day. Like, I wake up and, hey man, like, I could be doing a lot worse things than I'm doing right now. As much stress and as much anxiety.
I mean, dude, you're getting paid to make beer.
Yeah.
And you get to drink it. I mean, what?
Yeah.
What could be better than that?
Is drinking beer still cool?
I mean, the beer I drink is not the cool beer that I make, like,
People would be shocked to find out that we're just sitting here drinking, like, the lightest lager that you make.
Yeah, but we said it before, we'll say it again. Like, we make a lot of interesting, weird, unique, different beers, and the most humble beer you could drink is like a clean, crisp lager.
Yeah.
And that's a true testament to a brewer. So
they're hard to make. They are hard to make. You'd think like Bud Light is easy to make.
Yeah.
No.
It's hard.
Huh.
Brew me a consistently good lager, and then I'll show you my respect,
It's hard.
You want to throw marshmallows and Fruity Pebbles in a beer, and I don't know, whatever else.
Which you do.
Which I do too. That's all well and good, but show me you're a good brewer by brew me a clean, crisp lager, and you're good in my book any day.
Never would have thought that.
They're hard.
There's nothing to hide behind, man. You saw how clear and crisp this beer was, man. There's nothing to hide in there. So,
Chris, thank you. I mean, I really
thank you.
I feel like we just ran out the memory card on my camera because we've never talked a song on a podcast, which is fine. We still have the audio, and everybody else on YouTube is just looking at a blank screen. Maybe I'll post like some shots of the brewery
there you go.
that people can look at. But we could talk all night.
Yeah, I mean, I'd love to come back. Like we have stories to talk about. Once again, COVID is a whole nother podcast.
Or just we need to talk about. Yeah, we need to talk about like the times.
We say we'd never bring that time up again.
No, there's more because we also need to talk too. It's funny, like the stories while we were brewing. Like, remember the time I burnt myself?
I'll never forget it.
So we'll just leave that.
Okay.
Next time we'll talk about the time I burnt myself.
Well, I'm shocked at how much I learned just from listening, because I've heard a lot from you and talking to you about the brewery and being there a couple times. I'm shocked at to hear where it truly started and the
It's
amount.
really a Cinderella story. It really
it's
is.
nuts, man. It's like you can make a movie out of it. You really could.
Yeah.
And there's people that have been around since day one that walk in the brewery now, and they're like,
Wow.
or like my cousins that live out of state that come every couple years, and every 3 years when they'd come,
They see the change.
they'd be like, "Wait, what? You're over there now? It's nuts. It's nuts."
I mean, props to both of you guys for starting something like.
To think that I went over there and helped them can the other day. To think that we'd be canning beers and there would be a box truck, a truck waiting outside for the beers to be palletized, wrapped, get on the truck to be shipped all over the country.
It's insane.
In 6 years.
We never had this plan. It's not a bad thing. It's one of those things that really it was a monster, and
If you come to Long Island, you should probably stop by DUBCO.
you're not going to have a bad time.
Every time I'm there, I have a great time. And solid beer.
Instagram is DUBCO_.
That's right.
DUBCO_. And then
And then for somebody that hasn't made the connection yet, DUBCO is short for Destination Unknown Beer Company.
because that was another thing when we started. We're like, the name. See, the name is like a whole.
Well, I was going to ask
The
you,
name was another.
what's harder, naming a podcast or naming a
brewery was harder.
Yeah, I can imagine.
But like,
I already had the tattoo. It was easy for me.
oh,
There
yeah.
you go.
But imagine we're talking when you make a .com.
Yep.
We made a .com, which still to this day is destinationunknownbeercompany.com. Typing that out, and
That's exhausting.
our email address was Chris at destinationunknownbeercompany.com. It was such a ridiculous thing that you don't think about when
Yeah,
you're starting
yeah,
businesses. But I mean, the business part too. But I really wanted people to see that the brewery was a really big part of my life, and why I still talk about it, because people ask all the time, wait, you can leave a business and still be cool with a business? And the reasons we left, but the reasons behind you, and that's we have a financial podcast, and people be like, well, what did we learn today? I think we learned that if you're a young guy or a young girl and you don't necessarily think you're an academic and you want to go into the trades, you want to do something, look what Chris is 39 years old. He just turned 39 and has a multi-million-dollar brewery, and he makes beer. And it doesn't matter if you're a brewer or any other business owner. He did some stuff. He found some stuff, and he made it happen.
Yeah, don't be afraid to get outside your comfort zone. Don't be afraid to work hard and take chances, and align yourself with other people who work hard. That's the biggest thing. And once again, that's like an age-old adage, and it sounds lame and cliche, but I truly believe, and I've experienced it, and I live it every day. Working hard pays off. There's nothing to be ashamed about being a hard worker. If you're digging trenches out on the side of the road, or if you're brewing beer and living the life,
It's not as sexy as it seems. It's hard work.
It's working hard. You go home, you lay your head on your pillow, you feel fulfilled, you feel happy. If you do your best every day, no matter what you do, no one could take that away from you. And it beats being a desk jockey. It's very fulfilling.
And as far as financial freedom, it's great to know that you don't define your happiness by how much money you have or by how much money you make. It's all about the work ethic and the fulfillment that comes from making money. And
well, the freedom is you're enjoying what you're doing. That's freedom right there. There's so many people in today that spend their time doing something that they don't truly enjoy. I think the freedom there is finding something that you truly enjoy and enabling it, being able to monetize it, to be able to do that for a job.
Yeah, that's a dream. Do something you love, you never work a day in your life. No, do something you love, you're going to work the hardest you've ever worked in your life.
I love that.
Facts.
I love that.
Facts.
Man.
oh, drop the nugget right at the
Yes,
end.
I love it.
We're
Facts.
mic dropping
Yep,
right
let's
there.
end that on that, man.
Guys, thank you so much for listening.
Thank you for having me.
Our longest podcast episode ever. And I think it was a good one. Yeah, it was good to sit down, and we'll have, every time you come, we'll have Chris on, get updates, because the brewery's not done growing, and I know there's things in the works that maybe aren't public information that I'm super excited to hear about. And that would be a conversation for another time. JJ's got to go off gallivanting in Hawaii and living his laptop life over there and sipping Mai Tais in Oahu or whatever you're doing. And guys, until we catch you guys on the next ones, take care, y'all.
Cheers.